via cue card, so if you think you might want to ask a question, you grab a cue card and a pen, write your question, and the collector will and ask questions at that time.
It was.
All right, everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is Dan Fingus. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Conservation Voters. VCV works to elect pro-democracy and environmentally friendly candidates and then holds them accountable. We are happy to be helping host this event tonight as we join for the fourth stop of the Big Beautiful Tour about the Big Ugly Bill. This tour is hosted by VCV along with Vermont Natural Resources Council, Hunger Free Vermont, Planned Parenthood of Northern New England, and VPIRG. You're going to be hearing from most of those groups tonight. I also wanted to say a quick thank you to Town Meeting TV for being here tonight. They're recording this so that it can be replayed, and Steve's also done a little tech help for us, so really appreciate it. This summer, the US Congress and the President jammed through one of the most destructive bills of the modern era. We all watched as senators and representatives chose the politics of their president over the needs of their constituents. It was a low point for our country that just keeps getting lower, it seems. But it's not the only attack that's happened. The federal shutdown, now over 3 weeks old, layoffs of thousands of federal workers from critical departments, the stealing of millions of dollars of legal funds for solar, healthcare, food assistance, and the systematic attempt to make it as hard as possible for anyone to get federal assistance, including our municipalities engaging in flood recovery, and the huge investment in ICE and its Gestapo tactics to round up our neighbors and community members. The list could go on and on, unfortunately. It's a dark time for all of us. So I first want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Showing up to these kinds of events in itself is a big action. It's an act of bravery to be here in this political climate, and so we really appreciate it. This evening, we're going to hear from Vermont experts about how this bill will affect Vermonters and how a lot of the other cuts will affect Vermonters in the areas of energy, healthcare, and food security. We will also discuss how Vermont's government can protect and support Vermonters in the wake of these massive cuts, and what you all can do to help as well. During tonight's panel, I will start by asking some overview questions from our three panelists, and then we'll get questions from the audience. There are cue cards on this table, and we'll have staff walking around with them. If you think of a question you want to ask, you can just write a question on the cue card, and someone from the organizations will bring it up to me, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. And the last thing we do before we leave, hopefully your first action coming out of this meeting, is we all want to take a group photo to show that people showed up, people care about these issues, and that way we can share that message, and hopefully you can also share this group photo with all the folks you have on social media or other outlets. To start the evening, I want to make sure we all know that a lot of your local elected officials, your state representatives, wanted to join us tonight. They actually, we did this event, the first one in Shelburne, and Representative Leonora Dodge was there and immediately said, we're doing one in Essex, and then pestered us for weeks to make sure that we do one in Essex, and we're doing one in Essex because of their commitment to you all being informed and this discussion. So I'm going to welcome up the representatives from Essex, led by Representative and Majority Leader Lori Houghton.
Thanks, Dan, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm a little shorter. So I want to take a minute and introduce my colleagues who are here. So we have, if you can stand up, Karen Dolan, who is a seat mate with me in Essex Junction, and she is also Assistant Majority Leader. We have Alyssa Black, who is the chair of our House Health Care Committee and serves the town of Essex, and Leonora Dodge, who got us all here and sits on the Housing Committee and serves the town of Essex in a little slice, not a little, a big slice of Essex Junction. Ray Garofano is on vacation and couldn't be here, but she is glad you all showed up. So. I also want to thank a couple groups before I get started. I want to recognize and thank our federal workers who could be furloughed or potentially working without a paycheck. You serve with dedication, keeping our airports safe, our parks open and our benefits flowing and our communities strong. And your work matters, and I want to make sure that you all recognize that we are all grateful for you. Senator Sanders has resources for federal workers on his website, and your state representatives are also here to help you. So please spread that message. I'm also thankful for our panelists and all the nonprofits and organizations who are on the front line helping Vermonters while ensuring that their own staff, coworkers, and themselves are taking care of themselves. It's not easy being in your line of work right now, and I just want to say thank you from all of us. We had a forum here in Essex back in June that some of you may have attended, and I sure wish I could say that things are better now, and we know that they're not, unfortunately. Tonight, as we talk about the one big ugly bill and the federal shutdown, we are focusing on what it means to Vermonters. Behind every program that's been reduced or cut or will be is a parent working 2 jobs to afford childcare, a family worried about affording health care, and seniors worried about paying their heating costs. These are our neighbors. And Vermonters are already feeling the cuts. We're going to hear tonight, but there's been cuts to housing assistance, to nutrition programs, and to clean energy investments. And these cuts just ripple through the community. And while Vermont will never have enough money to backfill the drastic and devastating Trump Republican cuts, we will do everything we can to minimize the effect to Vermonters. Before we turn to our panelists, I just want to take a few minutes to give a broad overview on what Vermont is facing. Our fiscal year 2025 budget was $9 billion. Of that, $3.1 billion is from federal money. Medicaid is about half of that, and with the Trump Republicans' budget bill, we know people will be pushed off health care and funding to hospitals and our providers will be drastically decreased. The Trump Republicans were really tricky, though, because a lot of those cuts aren't going to happen until after the midterms. So we need to keep telling the story of what will happen to Vermonters. These federal dollars affect all Vermonters in some way. We talked about healthcare, food, nutrition, transportation, climate. And the amount I just gave is only the amount that comes to the state. It's not what goes direct to Vermonters in the form of SNAP benefits or what goes direct to our nonprofits. So the money that we could potentially lose, it's much more than $3.1 billion. We do have reserves and rainy day funds that are fully filled, but it's only $300 million. And so, as I said earlier, it's not enough for us to backfill what could and is potentially coming. The other thing that's not part of the one big ugly bill, but we are seeing the effects right now, is the federal shutdown. And the reason Democrats are holding strong to that is because of the loss of the healthcare subsidies. I just got my notice in the mail today. My premium is going to be $2,300 a month. I'm sure some of you have gotten letters, and I know some of you are on Medicare Advantage and are also getting notices, and you're wondering what is happening. The Trump administration is giving money to billionaires instead of helping us stay healthy. And again, that will have a ripple effect throughout our communities. And we also know that we can't trust the Trump administration. So in previous shutdowns, if we put state money forward, we knew we would be reimbursed. We don't know that now. And so the decisions that we're having to make are that much harder. While out of session, the Joint Fiscal Committee, which is made up of the House and Senate money chairs, work together and have conversations and meet to talk about the impacts and to release funding. Once in session, it will be the budget that we're working on. The governor starts the budget process, gives that to us, and we will be diving into all the programs. I mean, we will have to have some really hard conversations on what is working, what isn't, where do we have to backfill, where do we have to fill a hole, where do we have to cut to ensure something over here continues. This year will be like no other, but we will keep Vermonters at the forefront of all of our decisions. I want to bring up one other really important topic before we move to the panel. an organization called Americans for Prosperity. This is a far-right, dark money machine that funded Trump's return to the White House and was a critical driver of the One Big Beautiful Ugly bill. They are flooding our mailboxes today. They are on social media feeds, and they are spreading massive amounts of misinformation at a scale and speed we've never seen. They're pouring thousands of dollars into Vermont already, and the election is over a year away, and we know it's only the beginning. These folks are here to buy political outcomes for our billionaires. They are not here for us. And so I just ask that you pay attention, and if you have questions, please reach out to your representatives to make sure you're getting the factual information of what's happening in our state. Vermonters and the Vermont legislature remain committed to democratic principles and the rule of law. We will double down on our core values and work together in our communities to address the challenges we face. This will require new and creative solutions, but I believe we will be stronger on the other side. And what really gives me hope is seeing all of you here tonight. Vermonters, look out for each other. The government, the nonprofits won't be able to do this alone. We need all of us to be looking out for each other, helping our neighbors, and remaining strong. That doesn't mean, oh, I'm gonna get a little teary. That doesn't mean we can't disengage for a day or stick our head in the sand. We need to turn off the news. We need to go for a walk. We need to talk to our neighbors. We need to help each other to be able to remain strong and give us the fuel that we need to navigate each day. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Representative Houghton, and thank you the rest of the delegation for being here. We really appreciate the support. I think this community should feel good that you all are on top of this as much as we can be, knowing that it's a problem that you all didn't create and one that you can only partially solve, but there's still things that we can do. Let's get to the panel. So tonight we have experts in a few different issue areas, and I'm really excited to have this panel together. We have, starting right here, Honor Horton, Executive Director at Hunger Free Vermont. We also have Jessica Barquist, the Vice President of Public Affairs for Vermont at Planned Parenthood of Northern New England and Planned Parenthood Vermont Action Fund, and Johanna Miller, Energy and Climate Program Director at Vermont Natural Resources Council. So the three of them are going to tackle a few questions that we have set up already, and then we're going to go to audience questions. So starting with Honor. Honor, can you take a few minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in your respective field? In better times, what does your organization do to serve Vermont's people, economy, and/or environment? Paint a picture for us for the communities you serve.
Great, thanks. Okay, this is on. Great. So Hunger Free Vermont is Vermont's statewide anti-hunger advocacy, technical assistance, training, public education, and outreach organization. We've been around in one form or another, not always with the same name, for 32 years. And we are the organization that really champions all of the different federal nutrition programs in our state and make sure that they are working well for all of us in Vermont and that they are reaching every person who's eligible and that they're truly accessible to people. So there are a lot of different nutrition programs that the federal government funds and state governments administer. So we've already mentioned SNAP tonight, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It used to be called food stamps. We call it 3 Squares Vermont in Vermont, just to make everything simple. So there's that program. That's the biggest, most important food safety net program that we have nationally and here in Vermont. Just to give you a sense of that scope and scale, for every meal that our entire charitable food network, your local food shelf, the Vermont Food Bank combined provides, SNAP provides 9. So it's huge program, $155 million in food benefits that are spent in our local economy every year. There's also a lot of different child nutrition programs. So school breakfast and lunch, summer meals, after school meals, childcare meals for kids, WIC, and Meals on Wheels for older Vermonters and people with disabilities. All of those are federal nutrition programs. They all are interconnected and work together. When kids are accessing meals at school and families don't have to cover that cost, they can put more of their basic needs budget towards food for dinner and the weekends, for example, right? And we're the organization that led a coalition that achieved free school meals for all kids in every public school in Vermont. We were the first state in the country to introduce legislation at the state level to make that happen, and the 6th state to actually pass it. And right now, that we did that work collectively as a state is a huge critical support for families who are facing cuts to SNAP, for example, right? That we know that that kids can stay fed in school is going to be absolutely critical for families and all of us making it through what's coming now with the cuts to SNAP, the changes to those programs, and Medicaid that the HR 1, the one big beautiful ugly bill, made. So that's a little bit about what we do. We work on state laws. We do federal advocacy. We're fighting right now to say, USDA, you can continue to fund SNAP benefits nationally in November if you choose to, and you have to do that. We also provide a lot of training to help schools and childcare providers and senior centers and food shelves help people apply for these programs and understand what they are and what they can do for them. And we build coalitions and partners. We have food security networks throughout the state, 10 of them. There's one here for Chittenden County, and anyone can join. And that's just a little bit about what we do. Thanks so much for being here tonight and for having us.
Thanks, Anor. Jessica?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I have the distinct pleasure of representing 2 organizations tonight. So the first is Planned Parenthood of Northern New England. And Planned Parenthood of Northern New England provides comprehensive reproductive and sexual health care to more than 16,000 Vermonters across the state. We have 6 health centers in the state, and we provide even more care through telehealth. Approximately 1 in 4 of PPNNE's patients use Medicaid insurance. And these health centers really support some of our most vulnerable in our population. So often we can be the only healthcare provider that an individual will see in a year. We provide limited primary care, behavioral health supports, family planning, a number of different things, right? Wellness exams, birth control, cancer screenings. So there's a lot more that happens in those PPNNE health centers than you might think of or know us as, right? Like, yes, we provide abortion care, but it's so much more than that. And we see everybody who comes to us, regardless of their ability to pay. And over half of our patients are defined as having low incomes. And this is actually outdated. My talking point says last fiscal year we provided over 1 million in free care. That's jumped. I just got the numbers for fiscal year 25. It's actually 1.5 million. So it seems to be the trend. I've only been with the organization for 3 years, and every year we're going up another 500,000 of free care. So, you know, like the care that we provide for our communities is so critical. So proud of the work that our health centers do. It's actually Healthcare Assistant Appreciation Week. So we'll be sending out an email if you're on our email list to send some love to our healthcare providers because they do such incredible work. And then the second organization that I'm here representing is the Vermont Action Fund. And so that's our political and advocacy arm of Planned Parenthood. And so that's where we do a lot of our lobbying and our fighting for rights. And I like to throw out there, give you some good news before we get into all the bad, right? Because Vermont has done some really excellent things in terms of reproductive and sexual health. We were the first state in the country to pass a constitutional amendment protecting our rights to reproductive and sexual health care. So that, we call it the RLA, the Reproductive Liberty Amendment, passed by ballot. You might have voted on it in 2020, led by our leaders in the House and Senate that got that to the ballot box. And 77% of the vote voted in favor of that Reproductive Liberty Amendment. And every single town, even in towns that overwhelmingly voted Republican and voted for Trump, voted over 50% of the vote towards the Reproductive Liberty Amendment. So overall, Vermont very much cares about making sure that everyone has the right to make their own personal healthcare decisions and that everyone has access to the healthcare that they need.
Thank you. It's a bit humbling to follow people who work on such really critical, urgent issues. And just a little bit about me. So Johanna Miller, I lead the Climate and Clean Energy Program at the Vermont Natural Resources Council. We're based in Montpelier. We've been around for 62 years. We're an education and advocacy organization that works from the local level to the legislature on a broad suite of environmental protection issues, and from forest stewardship and wildlife protection to water quality issues to sustainable communities. And I have had the privilege of working on clean energy and climate issues for my entire professional career. And I'm grateful to be here with you tonight and in solidarity and in conversation. And again, a bit humbling to be talking about climate and clean energy when people are facing $2,300 a month premium in, premiums and other urgent needs. But I am grateful for the work that VNRC has done and the commitment that Vermont has had to clean energy and climate, not just because climate change has become, I would say, the existential, threat of our time. It's, creating, for my hometown of Montpelier, 2 years in a row, back-to-back devastating floods that not only, decimated some of our businesses, but really continue to wreak havoc on our budgets. And now we're, the new reality is coming home to roost as well. But a big privilege of my work is to work at the local level, helping to support the network of town energy committees. We have some energy committee leaders here locally. And we've been doing that work at VNRC for 20 years. About half the towns in the state of Vermont have these mostly municipally appointed grassroots groups. And they've been helping their select boards, city councils, and neighbors, particularly focused on low-income neighbors, to try and reduce their energy burdens, get off of fossil fuels, and have more affordable, clean, local energy resources that provide public health benefits. Really, we're talking about things like weatherization that my organization has supported for a long time. It is a climate, strategy. It is also largely a public health and social justice issue. So we have had great success working at the local level, and we're going to continue to do that work, but that work, as we're going to dig into tonight, just got exceedingly harder, and it's radically unfortunate for all the different reasons. But when it comes to clean energy and climate in Vermont, when we import every single liquid drop of the fossil fuels that we use, it's why Americans for Prosperity is zeroed in here. It is an economic issue, it is an economic justice issue, and it is a significant job creating issue. And what the big ugly bill is done to and will be doing to decimate that, beyond the cruel and deeply devastating, provisions in the big ugly bill, I would argue the stupidest thing about this terrible bill is undercutting our clean energy sector at the very moment when the world is leaning into clean energy and will leave the United States behind. And all when clean energy is cleaner, more flexible, easier to deploy, and increasingly far and far more affordable. So it's a really challenging moment, and it's a massive lost opportunity. And it is my hope, with solidarity among Vermonters that we can try to figure out how we rise up and fill the gaps and meet this moment.
Thank you all. So turning to the big, beautiful bill, it's a bill with lots of adjectives. We call it the big, ugly bill. Some unnamed person who's in Washington, D.C. calls it the big, beautiful bill. I just heard it called cruel and destructive. It's a lot of things. So what does that bill actually mean for the communities that you all serve? And a layer of misery, how is that being worsened by the federal shutdown? And we'll start with Honora again.
Well, first I just want to say that, it may sound counterintuitive for an anti-hunger organization, ED, to say this, but we're never going to solve hunger by working on hunger. So when people are hungry because they don't have enough money, they don't have enough resources to meet all of their basic needs at the same time. So if people have to spend their own money on healthcare because their premiums have gone up so high that they've had to drop their coverage, that is a hunger issue. That's a cause of hunger. And when we don't deal with climate change and we don't have the resources to make our communities climate resilient, and we have those devastating floods that you mentioned, then, we at Hunger Free Vermont had to drop all of our regular work to do emergency flood response, right? And try to track who didn't have food and how could we deploy resources to them. That is a hunger issue. So don't be humble, okay? Because what you're doing is critically important. All of these issues are deeply interconnected, and that they're interconnected in the attacks on them in the One Big Beautiful Bill. So that's really important to be clear about. I also want to say that the way that HR 1, that bill, goes after programs, not just the nutrition programs, not just SNAP, which is the nutrition program that bill attacks, but also healthcare, Medicaid, is mostly not by actually cutting the benefit amounts for people. It's by putting in new layers of paperwork burden that people are going to experience as being insurmountable, so that we give up on claiming the benefits that we paid for with our tax dollars. These are our programs that we have a right to use when we need them. That is why they're there. And the design of this is just to make it so difficult and confusing and time-consuming and complicated to just meet the new requirements that we give up. But in fact, very few people need to lose their benefits in Vermont because of that bill. And what we have to do in order to make sure that that doesn't happen, that people don't lose their access to food, is we have to make sure that we are being smart and strategic in deploying benefit navigation for people. And this is true for Medicaid as well. Mostly, it's about meeting new paperwork burdens. And there are ways that people can do that, but they need help. And so that is what we're really advocating for to our wonderful state legislators. Thank you all so much for being here tonight and all the hard work that you're doing. We're so heartened by the commitment that everybody of all political parties on the Joint Fiscal Committee made last week to prioritize fuel and food assistance in how Vermont deploys its contingency funds to meet this challenging moment. So, and the federal government shutdown is also threatening SNAP benefits for November. But I want to be really clear that that's not inevitable. USDA has a contingency fund. They don't have to cut millions and millions and millions of people all across the country off from SNAP in November. They're making that choice. And we're actually preparing to call on Governor Scott to publicly reach out to USDA and call on USDA as our governor to deploy the SNAP contingency funds and issue SNAP benefits as usual. We also are calling on our emergency board to release contingency funding to cover fuel and assistance and SNAP for November, because otherwise we will be facing a hunger crisis of a proportion that we are absolutely, we have not seen before, and that our charitable food system absolutely cannot meet in just a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Anor. Jessica? And by the way, all of this is horrifying, and we do realize that. We also want to get as much information to you all as possible. So we do feel that this is heavy, and it is slightly weird that we hear something that devastating and then just move on, but there is chances for questions. So just want to acknowledge that.
This is why I started with the good, because now we get into the meat of the bad, right? Okay, so the big, beautiful bill, OBBA, makes sweeping changes to Medicaid, right? And cutting many, many people off of healthcare through all of these paperwork requirements, increased work requirements, filing every 6 months. Like, there are lots of different changes. And as the majority leader pointed out, a lot of these don't happen until after midterm elections. And that is very intentional. And I think it's really critical to point out that these cuts in people's basic health care were made to give trillions of dollars in tax cuts to Trump's 1% friends, right? Like, that is the reason that people are losing their health care. So here in Vermont, we have about 168,000 Vermonters on the Medicaid program. That's about 26% of Vermonters. And we're looking at as many as 45,000 losing their healthcare coverage as a result of just this one bill. We're not even talking about all the other things that are coming down, right? With the loss of the ACA tax credits, which is what this government shutdown is all about, right? Democrats they're doing the work. They are holding the line, saying that this is absolutely unsustainable. We cannot have this increase in our healthcare premiums because they're unaffordable, and more people are going to drop off insurance. People are not going to be on Medicaid, and that means that our hospitals, our emergency rooms, our FQHCs, our federally qualified health centers, your Planned Parenthoods, all of the people that are federally mandated to see every patient that walks in their door are going to see more extreme, more sick, more dire need emergency care patients that, again, costs our state more money, right, than the preventative care that we provide. So there is a lot coming down, and also this bill targets Planned Parenthood directly. This bill had a provision in it specifically targeting Planned Parenthood because we provide that legal abortion care that the state overwhelmingly approves of us providing. We were defunded from the Medicaid program, which essentially means that we are required by federal law to continue to see every Medicaid patient, but we cannot get reimbursed for that care. The state of Vermont has been working on a state solution for us for the Medicaid defund, but they have been very clear that that is only for this fiscal year, that it can only go to the end of July or to the beginning of July. The fiscal year is July to July, because that's what this budget defunded us for. So if that defund were to continue, we would be in a much more perilous financial situation than we're already in. But really grateful to the state. We just got word today that we're able to continue billing for Medicaid. So we have not billed Medicaid since June. And we're able to continue that again because of the state's support and stepping in. But it's an unnecessary provision. It's definitely, in my humble, I'm not a lawyer, but in my opinion, it's unconstitutional, and it is being challenged both by our Attorney General as well as Planned Parenthood affiliates across the country. So we're hoping that it gets overturned and is deemed illegal, but as of right now, that is kind of the status. And I love this timeline. I'm so glad it's behind us, because it was so complicated to figure out when all of these things are happening in this bill for healthcare. So this is healthcare specific. It doesn't include the housing and the food benefits and the heating fuel assistant benefits that are also all on the chopping block. But I think it's really important for folks to know when these things are coming, because with the ACA premiums and all of this, you might not know, especially if you're a person who just continues the same plan year after year. You might not get that explanation of benefits that your plan is going to go up until you get your first bill in January. And so it's really important to pay attention, to know the healthcare that you have, and to know what's coming down the line for you in your individual plan.
And so more specifics about related to what does the one big ugly bill do in terms of gutting clean energy and climate action is it kills most everything when it comes to clean energy technologies that will cut planet warming pollution, and instead leans very heavily and doubles down on fossil fuels. So, which is terrible, terribly short-sighted, again, because it is cheaper, faster, and better for public health to lean into the clean energy sector, but we are fundamentally stepping away from it. And specifically, you're probably well aware of this, and I'm just gonna go through a few things, but you know, the residential solar tax credit is going away at the end of the year, which has the ability to cover up to 30% of the cost for households to invest in solar energy, so ends on December 31st of 2025. This is a tax credit that was created 20 years ago under George W. Bush, which was a bipartisan, very strongly supported and successful initiative, and now it's gone. Or it will be by the end of the year, and I can tell you now that if you haven't already done so, it's probably too late because the queues are tied up. But it takes aim virtually at everything in the clean energy arena, with the exception of, well, particularly at wind and solar when it comes to the clean electricity and electric vehicles, more beneficial, more affordable, more efficient technologies like cold climate heat pumps, heat pump hot water heaters, weatherization, and other energy efficiency initiatives. And it initially, thank goodness the Senate made small changes in the end. It initially set very, very unrealistic thresholds for getting projects deployed and commissioned. So small scale clean energy initiatives are gonna be gone pretty much by the end of this year. Larger solar and wind projects have to begin construction by July 4th of 2026 and be in service no later than December 31st of 2027 to be eligible. It's pretty significant, and so the decimation of the tax credits for clean energy, which, you know, the Inflation Reduction Act, which they're targeting, was the biggest climate bill in history, not just in the United States of America, but was gonna do more to cut climate pollution. And really importantly, put people to work, you know, into the well-paying jobs so that they don't have to, you know, turn to like public coffers to feed their families, which people just fundamentally want to do. So it's deeply short-sighted, and I think will be damaging for our economy, for public health, and for young people and future generations when we're talking about strategies that actually are essential to mitigate the impacts of an increasingly destabilized planet. I want to say, in the era of like good news, I want to give a huge shout out to our Attorney General Charity Clark for all that she has been doing to step up and step into this moment, in, you know, oftentimes in allyship with her fellow attorney generals. But she went to bat for electric vehicle charging infrastructure funds that were going to be retracted. They successfully pushed back on that, and those dollars were delivered and will be going into communities. I think another tranche of them coming out this later in November. Another great program that promised to deliver clean energy benefits to low-income Americans in particular was the Solar for All program, a $7 billion national program whereby Vermont was set to have $62 million coming down to support solar for multifamily units, for low-income households, for communities, again, putting people to work and delivering real, clean energy and economic benefits. Just this past week, Attorney General joined 20 other AGs to file suit to try to bring those dollars back into the state of Vermont. So let's cross our fingers, because again, many of these things are questionable and or just totally illegal. So here's hoping that that suit is successful. We'll be following that closely. And then Honor mentioned this, but the LIHEAP program that helps low-income people stay warm and safe in their homes and in a cold climate like Vermont is really an essential human service, is still out there, but it is in the crosshairs of the Trump administration, who has proposed eliminating funding for the program in fiscal year 2026. So it is uncertain and unclear, the fate of that program, and I'm sure deeply unnerving for people who, already struggle to stay warm in very inefficient households. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and again, when it comes to the clean energy and climate stuff, I think it is so deeply short-sighted and could actually, Vermont has had a strong commitment to clean energy, putting people to work in the clean energy economy, and states need to step up and collaborate to fill in the gap when it comes to the federal shortcoming on this.
Thank you all. And, some numbers. Joey was just talking about the Solar for All program. So that's $7 billion nationally. It's $36 million to Vermont. $62 million to Vermonters. That was already said, it's yours, and Trump just took it away. And is it legal? No, but did he do it? Yes. 12.5 million approximately, and we're SNAP benefits every month, right, that are on the line. So these are real huge dollar amounts that we're talking about. You all already got into it because you all are problem solvers, and you start thinking about how do we solve this immediately. So the federal government is going to refuse to act. They're probably not going to head off harm in a lot of these things. What can Vermont as a state do, and what should we do to respond to protect our residents? And we'll start with Jessica.
All right, great. I'm so glad I get to go first on this because I got a lot to say. So you here in Essex have some of the best representatives in the State House. And I don't say that flippantly, right? Your representatives have an enormous task ahead of them this year, right? They have to look at all of us advocates who are saying, we have this priority need for Vermonters, and they have to figure out how to put it in their budget. And, this budget, I think Chair Black has said this a few times, that if you want to know priorities, you look to where the money is going, right? And so when we look at our budget, we have all of these priorities. It is important that people are housed. It is important that people are fed and clothed and have heat and have health care. There is no way that our legislators can do that without raising revenue, right? It just doesn't make sense. And so they are going to have an impossible task this year. They are going to need to raise revenue, and there are lots of ways that they can do that, right? We have had a governor for many years who has absolutely refused to entertain any tax on our wealthiest Vermonters, on second homes, on any sort of, common sense tax law. So we don't have the revenue to fully fund our priorities. And your representatives have to pass a budget that supports all of these priorities, and that means increasing revenue. And so they are going to need you to support them in that. They're going to need you to do that outreach so that when they get to these tables, they can say, I had this many constituents reach out to me. I cannot back down on this issue. I need to represent my constituents. They are going to need you to have their back in that fight, because it is going to be a fight, and it is going to be a large fight. And they have to get that best budget onto the governor's desk. Whether or not he'll sign it, and I hope he will, because these are really critical issues for everyone, but whether or not he signs it has to be up to him. You all have to support your legislators in making sure that that budget gets passed, that uplifts all of these priorities that Vermonters need to thrive. Mic drop.
But they're town meeting TV's mics, so don't drop them. Joey, go ahead.
I just want to concur and yes, agree that we have to be looking at new resources. We can't pretend that we can do more with less or make hard choices and everything will just be fine. I think that's just deeply irresponsible. I mean, there's some small things that we can be doing, right now, like, we could be looking at how we can, ask more of some of the more wealthy Vermonters. Right now in the energy space, we're subsidizing second homeowners' fossil fuel use because there's an exemption on fuel oil for residential homes. You could, for second homeowners, I don't know how much money that would raise, but we need to be looking at the small things. We also need to be looking at the big things. We also need to make the most efficient use of existing resources. We have an amazing entity called Efficiency Vermont that has been helping, Vermont and the state of Vermont as a whole keep our electric rates lower because we've invested in energy efficiency. They're an incredible ally. What can we be doing to potentially unlock some of their ability to focus more in cutting pollution and other sectors, including in the heating and transportation sector? Again, I think we need to be looking to partner with other states. I mentioned the Attorney General. You mentioned the Attorney General. I think the governor and legislative leaders also need to be looking at allyship with other states. I mean, frankly, New England collectively could be a force on these issues, working more collaboratively. I'm deeply grateful on clean energy and climate that California is the 4th largest economy in the world. And they are continuing to lean into doing their part, including as an economic development opportunity. So allyship is gonna be really important. And I think we need to look at what we're doing now. I mean, I believe this is the correct fun fact, but it will be coming out in the Energy Action Network's latest annual progress report. But right now we have 6 times the fees on clean electricity, our cleanest by far energy sector, than we do on the fossil fuel heating and transportation sector, where 6 times pollution comes from. So it's a sort of deeply, inverse. We should be looking at where does the pollution come from? What are the existing fees, and where should we be putting, raising more revenue and shifting it into the kinds of solutions like clean, beneficial electrification, energy efficiency, things that save people money, make them healthier, and put people to work in the kinds of jobs that people want to be working in today, that are actually household, jobs that can sustain households. So those are a few things that I think of. So I think really needing to lean into allyship too as a big piece.
Thank you, Joey. Go ahead, Honor.
So I do just want to say, in our rainy day fund, as Representative Houghton said, we have $300 million. Do you know where we have another $300 million? All of us who are going to receive Trump tax cuts that I don't think we asked for, and I think we'd rather have them be used to feed our family members and our neighbors and sustain our communities and keep them flood resilient and make sure that we all have access to affordable health care. So when we talk about raising revenue, it's not impossible, and there are sources, and I think we need to really triple down on our Vermont values of uniting together to make sure that we can all make it through the next 3 years, because that's where we're at. So here's what I think we can do as a state, with understanding that we do have limits to our resources. That would be a strategic approach that our legislature and our state administration can take. One, raise revenue. That's already been talked about. The second is to leverage every single federal dollar, because there are lots and lots of federal dollars that can still be leveraged. And if we deployed benefit navigators, right, that really worked well when Obamacare was launched and we had to all figure out the exchange and all of that, And we trained those folks to be able to talk to everybody they connected with about Medicaid and SNAP and all the other programs all at one time. And we made sure that every person who was eligible for those programs was enrolled and getting the maximum federal benefits. That would save our charitable systems. That would really help us all get through this next period. It would really mitigate the hunger crisis that's coming, the healthcare crisis that's coming. And we can do that. And then the third piece is there are people, the first always to be kind of under attack in this bill, and its effects are our refugees, our asylees, our Afghan special immigrant visa holders, people who we invited here. We actually need them and their skills and their labor, and we welcome them to Vermont. And now they have been their food benefits have already been cut off. They have already been cut off of healthcare. So there are people who won't be eligible for federal benefit programs. There are people for whom those programs will be, their benefits will be lowered and they won't be sufficient. So we also need to fund flexible kind of funding for concrete supports for people and house those funds in trusted community-based direct service providers. So if one family needs a gas card so they can keep getting to work, so they can keep feeding their family, they get a gas card. If parent-child centers had a pool of funding, they could make sure that the people they're serving can still have access to diapers and food. There are many different ways that families intelligently piece together month by month by month what they need to make it through. And if we made sure that there was some funding available to let them do that, people of Vermont are smart and they will be able to make it through, and we can help them do that. So those are the three pieces: leverage every federal dollar, fund concrete supports for the people who aren't eligible, and raise the revenue so that our legislators have something to work with in what's going to be a very challenging session come January in Montpelier.
Thank you, Honor. Crystal clear. This is my last question. So if we have some good questions in already, but if you have a question that you're thinking of right now, Jack can get you a card and we can try to get to it tonight. Starting with Joey. Joey, what actions can concerned Vermonters take to mitigate the damage caused by all of these cuts?
So first I would say, and you're doing it by showing up here tonight, get active locally. From where I sit, I mentioned the network of town energy committees. They are inspiring. They are working collaboratively. They are leaning into community, and we need community more and more at this moment than at any other time. And I think we will still be able to drive and deliver results even with the implications of the big ugly bill. So, continue to step into your community. And then from there, with that perspective, make sure that you are communicating and supporting your legislative leaders, and as they do the hard work that they are doing now, and will have to dig into even further in an incredibly challenging legislative session coming up. So lean in locally, get active, and we have all kinds of different ideas to do that. If you talk to Jack, the most amazing organizer ever. I would also say make sure that you're communicating your values and your hopes for the governor and his leadership. He is a Republican governor in a nation led by a Republican president, who I think has an opportunity and obligation to describe and advocate for his constituents who are, as you've heard and as you all know well, it's why you're showing up tonight, going to be facing increasingly challenging times. So make sure that you are knocking on the door of the governor or calling his office at 802-828-3333 and making sure that he is hearing from you about what you value, what he hopes you will do, and also supporting him in doing that, because it is hard. This is all very difficult. Same thing with Attorney General Clark. We should be celebrating that elevating that kind of leadership. We need more in this moment. We also have incredibly hardworking people at our state agencies, but the elected officials appointed by the governor need to hear that we need to be, when there are gaps in the clean energy sector that is probably going to force layoffs from hardworking families and making it harder for Nor and her colleagues to deliver food and basic services to people. Vermont needs to figure out how we can step in and creatively fill the gaps, and maybe that is by collaborating with other states, but our state agency officials need to hear about that from you all. And then that's pretty much it, but I just want to say to our legislative leaders who have shown up here tonight, making sure that you're communicating with them, but also supporting them, because this is incredibly challenging work, and we are a small state that still has a commitment to civic discourse and a still working democracy. We need to lean into that as we try to solve very hard problems.
Thank you, Joey. Anor?
So everything you just said. Legislators, our state legislators, actually very rarely get thanked for the work that they're doing. And I think that when you're in a district where you're represented as ably as you all are here in Essex Junction and Essex, by legislators, and you say, I agree with everything that they're doing. So we're good. That's when it's even more important, actually, for you to pick up your pen or pick up the phone and let your legislators know that you are supporting what they're advocating for and working for at the State House. And of course, let them know if you don't support what they're doing too. But a very tiny number of people in Vermont actually take that action in any given legislative session. And it makes a tremendous, tremendous difference. Just 10, 15, 20 communications from constituents is a very significant number of communications for our legislators to get on any given issue. And absolutely, the governor needs to hear from us as well. So this is a season to really use your voice. And showing up for these kinds of events is also just such a powerful and important thing to do. We have to keep building community and supporting each other. That's how we're going to get through this. So as I said before, hunger is the kind of issue that has many, many, many root causes. So you could support anti-hunger work by working on any social justice issue that is your passion. Just join something and sign up for some action alerts somewhere. You could certainly sign up for Hunger Free Vermont's action alerts, and we're going to be putting out a call to action in the next couple of days for you to practice dialing that number to the governor's office to make sure that USDA actually issues the SNAP benefits for our entire country and the 63,500 people in Vermont who rely on SNAP every month. But we all have action alerts that you can sign up for. Just get yourself connected somewhere. That is the most important thing you can do. If you have the resources to donate money as well as your time and your attention, then of course, do that too. Many of our organizations, as Jessica said, are also facing our own federal cuts. And we will have to come up with private dollars, more private dollars to continue to be able to do the critical work of keeping everybody aware of what's going on or keeping people served with vital health care. So those are all things that it would make a huge difference for all of us to do. Just continue to take action. Every action produces results. That is my mantra that I live by every day when I wake up, and I think I cannot possibly do what is required of me today for Vermont. But I am going to just act I'm just going to act, and then I'm going to take the next action, and I'm going to take the next action, and every action is going to produce some result, and tomorrow I'm going to get up and I'm going to do it again. And if we all did that, we would get through this together. Thanks.
Thanks, Honor. Jessica.
Yeah, I know we have your questions to get to, and I really want to get to it, so I'll keep it brief. Like, yes to all of this, right? It is going to take that continued, sustained outreach to all of your elected officials, all the way from governor on down. But also talk to your neighbors, talk to your community, make sure that people are aware of these things, right? Like, stay informed as much as your mental health can allow. And make sure that your community is informed too. You got a lot of information tonight. Go home, talk to your neighbors, say, hey, did you know this about your healthcare? Do you know what kind of plan you're on? So that everyone can have the best chance of being informed and having the information, because there's a lot of change happening really quickly, and our state offices don't have the resource to make sure that everyone is getting this information. And so part of it is on us as collective communities to really make sure that that information is getting out there and folks are aware that things are going to be changing and that they might need to file their paperwork more often or whatever those changes might be. Folks need to be more informed. So help us help your communities know what's happening.
Thanks, Jessica. And we'll stay with you since you gave such a short answer. We're moving on to your questions. Also, Jack's still taking them if you have thoughts. So Jessica, it's two questions for you. One is just maybe some clarification about the Trump administration's ability to override the benefits provided by the Reproductive Liberty Act and what we can do about that. And also, what are we doing to help elderly folks pick another plan due to the loss of Advantage plans and find affordable health care?
Such good questions. Okay, so for the first one, we have an amazing state constitution, but when you look at the way that the laws work, federal law always supersedes state law. So if Congress were to enact federal law, or they were to change, abortion laws nationwide through the Supreme Court or what have you, that would supersede our constitutional amendment. I used to say Trump, but I've changed to supersede. And also, they don't have to take away our rights to take away your access to care, right? Like, we're seeing that with the defund. They are doing it by the back door. They are challenging the safety of medications like mifepristone that is used in abortion. They are defunding Planned Parenthood. They are doing everything they can within their legal rights to take away your access without saying that they're taking away your access, because they know it is deeply unpopular across the whole country. And then the bigger piece around are the Medicare Advantage plans going away. That is a bigger question. I know that our Vermont Legal Aid runs an office called the Healthcare Advocate. They are fielding calls about this all the time. I don't have a good answer for you, but I think this is another place where it's really important to stay informed and to call on those state resources for help.
Thank you so much. And thankfully, the Union for our state employees and the legislature rejected an idea of the governors to put all of our state workers on these Advantage plans. And so thankfully we didn't do that, or they'd all be losing healthcare too. For Honor, so the writer is an organizer of an indivisible group with a mailing list of over 700. How can they get talking points and action items to pressure the Governor Scott to call on the USDA to release emergency funds for SNAP? Timing and numbers can allow us to exert pressure for you.
Well, I love this. So go to, so first of all, my email address is ahorton@hungerfreevt.org. So you can email me directly and I can get you connected. But for everybody else, hungerfreevt.org is our website. And there is a get involved section, and inside of that drop-down menu is the Hunger Action Center. And if you go to the Hunger Action Center, you can sign up for our quarterly e-news, and also you can opt in to be on our action alert list. And that is how you will get all of our communications that will include talking points and everything you need to know, exactly what to say, exactly what number to call when that call to action goes out. And I would love that to be forwarded to your 700 people on your Indivisible group list. Awesome. You just made my night. Thank you.
That's really great. And I'll say most of these questions are how can a person help, or how can we as a community help? So there's a lot of help questions, including this one. Joy, I may start with you because I think I know how you're going to answer, and then others are welcome to answer. What can teenagers do to help?
Oh, I should give this question to Evelyn, my fabulous colleague Evelyn Seidner. Well, I think young people are already engaging. Vermont has an incredible youth lobby network, it's called, and it is a independent, youth-led collaborative of young people who recognize that they have to live on this planet for a long time, and that the implications of past practices leaning heavily into fossil fuels and our ongoing reliance and reluctance to abandon them and lean into cleaner, cheaper, healthier energy sources is going to have significant consequences for them. So Youth Lobby is an entity that the Vermont Energy Education Program helps to support and nurture. And my fabulous colleague, Evelyn Seidner, who's right out here outside that door. Come on in, Evelyn. And if you want to talk to me or Evelyn more about that, I would love to talk to you about that, because young people know that there's so much at stake, and I think there's a lot of feeling of hopelessness and despair. But when you're talking about climate action, it is mostly about getting off of fossil fuels, which is potentially the largest economic development and job creation and household feeding strategy that we could and should be leaning into, as opposed to backpedaling on. So lifting up young people's voices in this moment on these issues, people who have the moral authority and so much more at stake, is going to be really critical. So that's one. Is that the answer you thought I was going to give?
Yes.
Yes.
Any other thoughts? Okay. I will, so in the spirit of people are trying to do things, I do want to give a shameless plug to the First Congregational Church in Burlington. They wanted to note that their JUMP program gives gas cards, food vouchers, laundry vouchers, and thrift store vouchers, or $75 in overdue utility bills on Thursdays and Fridays to 30 individuals each day. And individuals can come every 3 months. So there are programs like that out there. I'm sure there are many, 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 but knowing about them in case you run across somebody who needs help is always important. In the vein of how can folks help, we have two questions, and they're probably for both of you, but one is, can Vermont form a group of volunteers who are in the financial services field to help people navigate these changes? And the other is, how can people who are looking for opportunities to help their neighbors get educated on the new eligibility paperwork requirements and organize, do that? So I don't know, they're unfortunately, both food and healthcare have this issue. So I don't know if you want to start.
Well, those are great ideas, both of them. And that may be a direction that we really need to go in. I will say, financial services professionals in particular, the community action agencies of Vermont run an amazing free tax preparation program every year that is really critical, because Vermont, again, thank you, Vermont legislature, has passed some of the most progressive and generous state tax credits, both a child tax credit and an earned income tax credit, and spread those tax credits to the broadest numbers of people. It's almost one of the most generous in the whole country. But if people who don't earn enough to file their taxes don't know about these tax credits, they don't bother to file. And if you don't file, you can't claim these fully reimbursable credits. So this is a source of, funding to meet families' basic needs, people's basic needs, that is often being left on the table by lower income people in our state. And so free tax help is one way you can help. Contact your community action agency. There's 5 for every region. Here, where we are, it's CVOEO. And sign up to help. That is one really great way. And the community action agencies are also do a lot of benefits navigation help and help people sign up for Three Squares Vermont and Medicaid and other key programs. So there are lots of regional and locally based direct service organizations that do use volunteers already to help people navigate these programs, and any one of them in your community would be a great place for you to reach out.
And just for folks, CVOEO is the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, I believe.
Yes, thanks. Nailed it.
Great. All right, let's talk about how we pay for things. Someone is asking, it's probably Honora, but maybe multiple of you talked about using and maximizing federal funds. How do we know about these funds, like our matching funds, and how do we encourage the state to do this?
Right. Well, the way that federal money flows into states and what states have to do to get it, and then what individuals have to do to sign up for federal benefits is a very complicated system, and it's intentionally designed to be complicated to dissuade people from making use of these programs that we, again, paid for with our tax dollars and all have a right to use and deserve to be able to use when we need them. And so I think that the most important way that we can help with this approach of making sure that we're really leveraging every federal dollar, we're really pulling every federal dollar into Vermont to help people meet their basic needs, is to be in communication with your legislators. That's the request that many of us in the nonprofit sector who work on basic needs issues are going to be making collectively. To just FYI, y'all, that's the request that's coming. And if you also write and communicate with your legislators and make that request, that is going to have so much more power than our voices will in the State House. So that's how we do it. Let our state government know that that is a top priority. It's going to take people power because these programs are really difficult. And why should we trust the government right now, right? It's not, our federal government's not trustworthy. And so people need that warm human connection to walk through why it's worth applying and how you can do it. These applications are really, really daunting. And so, so we need that human support to get people through.
And I'll just add that it can be really challenging to know when and how to do this work. And so that's a great way to get on our action alerts, because us as advocates are following these things, and we'll send out action alerts when there is something that you can respond to, when we need you to take action on one of these federal requests. So get connected, sign the petitions, make sure that you're on the email list so you get the alerts and you know when are those moments where you really maximize your impact for that outreach.
Great. And for folks who maybe missed the table or didn't read all of the many papers on the table, there is a Getting Active sheet with QR codes and ways to get active with all four of the organizations that are listed here. And any of Evelyn, Jack, or Josh, who's in the back of the room, would be happy to help you get connected with any of these groups as well. All right. I think this will be the last question, and we can kind of dive back into taxes. I guess the question is, will states start taxing higher incomes at a higher rate? You started talking about that already. Anything you all want to add about the need for us to increase the size of the pie and what that should look like in Vermont?
I feel like we covered this really well. I think the only thing that I will add is, for many years, us as advocates and organizations and your legislature has been asked to do more with less. And I think that it is unacceptable to me, and it should be to you, that we are asking people to go without. We're asking people to go without food and without health care because we're afraid of taxing our most wealthy Vermonters, especially in light of the tax breaks that they're getting federally and all of the other pieces that are going on, right? So I think, whether or not it's going to happen, how it's going to happen is all to be determined, but the sentiment should be that this is unacceptable and we cannot allow that to be the mantra this year and going forward.
All right, I think we have hit all the questions. So I want to thank our panelists for being here tonight, Nora, Jessica, and Joey. We want to give him a big round of applause. I want to thank all of you for being here and taking your time this evening to learn about this. And hopefully this doesn't stop in this room. You bring it elsewhere, you bring it out into your communities. It's dozens of people in this room, but hundreds or thousands of people, and we really need to get this message out about what's happening and how we can do more in Vermont to protect Vermonters. I also want to thank our state representatives who are here, Leonora Dodge, Alyssa Black, Karen Dolan, Lori Houghton. I think there's one hiding in the back too, Jenna Brown. Thank you all for being here. I will note we also have state senators, so when you're looking to call people and thank them or push them, there are state senators. Oh, don't worry, I'm getting there. There are state senators. Depending on where you live in Chittenden County, you could have one set of 3 senators or a different set of 3 senators or 1 senator. It's very complicated, but if you don't know who your state senators are, come find me. I'm happy to look up and figure it out for you, or if you tell me what town you're in, it's pretty easy, except for sometimes the lines get weird. But we will help you find your state senator and make sure you're contacting them as well. Also, calling the governor, telling him to be a leader, telling him to push back pretty much on anything is really helpful. And his number again is 802-828-3333. He also has an email form on his website. You can do it by email if you don't want to actually call and talk to someone. I mean, I don't know that I've ever heard any legislator or the governor count differently. They're usually like, I've been getting dozens of calls, or I've been getting, dozens of emails. I think it's all the same. Obviously, if you send an email to your state representatives, it actually gives them time to find time to respond to you. Whereas if you call them, they may not be available right that minute. I think the governor's office, it's an office, so I think it's the same either way. So we need to take our first actions. We've learned all this stuff. We're going to bring it out to our communities. We are going to sign up for all of these organizations, to the ones you care about, to make sure we know what we're doing. And we're going to take a group photo right now to show people that we showed up tonight and that we care about this. And we're going to protect Vermonters from the big ugly bill. Ready? Come on to the front, folks. Come on up. Let's move. Yeah, let's move this to just move it back. Can you move this chair back? Yeah. All right. Great. Hey, all right, you want to hold one part? Awesome. All right, everybody here, come on up. You guys can go forward. You guys can go forward, and everybody can All right, everybody, squeeze in, don't be shy. Oh, squeeze in, everybody can just move from there to the center, All right, everybody looks straight at the camera. Awesome. Beautiful. Oh my God, you guys are the best. Nice, just a couple more. Oh, nice, beautiful. Thank you all so much.